Right now, without owning a single dollar it lends, without taking on a cent of risk when you don't pay your bills, one company quietly takes a tiny slice of what feels like almost every purchase on Earth. It's worth more than the five biggest banks in Europe combined, and you use it constantly. It's Visa. You know the name, it's on the card in your pocket, but almost nobody can actually tell you what Visa does because Visa isn't a bank, it doesn't lend you money, and it doesn't carry the risk you'd assume. What it built instead might be the single best business model ever created. A business that, once you understand it, looks less like a company and more like a toll booth bolted onto the entire world economy. In this video, we're going to take that business apart, the four puzzle pieces it's built on, and by the end you'll understand why Visa is almost mathematically impossible to stop. Let's start where it began, with a problem. In California, in the 1950s. America after the Second World War is booming. Elvis is on the radio, James Dean is on the movie screen, shiny new cars are on the roads, and Americans are spending like never before. But there's a catch. Almost everything is paid for in one way: cash. And if you didn't have cash, you had to physically go to a bank, take out a loan, and turn it back into cash. Clumsy, slow. So in 1958, the Bank of America, then the biggest bank in California, has an idea. It launches a card called the Bank AmeriCard. Now, pay later cards weren't brand new. Diners Club and American Express had experimented with the idea. The real innovation was something else, buried in the fine print: a credit function. If you didn't have enough money at the end of the month, the card would spot you a kind of mini loan, and the bank charged handsomely for it, up to 18% interest a year. Sound familiar? It should. What the Bank of America just quietly invented in a city in California was the credit card, and people went insane for it. The idea was that you could now buy anything: a fridge, groceries, a night out, anywhere, anytime, on borrowed money. Within a single year, 2 million cards were in circulation. It worked so well the bank wanted to expand into other states. And here it hit a wall that weirdly ends up explaining Visa's entire future. In the 1960s, American banking law was so tightly regulated that a bank could only operate inside one state. So how do you spread a card across a whole country you're legally not allowed to operate in? The Bank of America's answer is one you already know from McDonald's: franchising. McDonald's lets independent people run their own restaurant using the McDonald's system for a fee. The Bank of America did the same thing, except with credit cards instead of burgers, and banks instead of restaurant owners. It let banks all over the country issue its card in exchange for a fee. And crucially, at that moment, there was no serious competition, which handed them something enormously valuable, a thing Visa still lives off today. Economists call it the first mover advantage, and it sounds like fancy jargon, but the idea is dead simple. Get there first, get big fast, and become so entrenched that catching up is almost impossible. And in this particular business, that advantage is worth more than almost anywhere else. Hold that thought. It's the reason nobody can dethrone Visa, and we'll come back to it. Through the 60s, the card became a monster. In 1960, about $59 million ran through it. By 1968, 400 million. A staggering success, and it turns out too successful, because that success created two problems that would blow the whole thing up. Problem one, the Bank of America didn't partner with every bank, so all the banks left out in the cold got together and launched their own rival system, which they called MasterCharge, the ancestor of the second card giant that still exists today, MasterCard. Remember them. They matter later. Problem two, even the banks that did franchise the Bank AmeriCard grew resentful. The more of them there were, the more powerful they became. And eventually they no longer wanted the Bank of America controlling the whole thing alone. In the early 70s, the Bank of America lost that fight. It had to let go of its own card, and a brand new company formed around it, one owned collectively by all the participating banks. Since Bank AmeriCard wasn't exactly a globe-conquering name, they picked a new one that would work in any language on Earth. They called it Visa. And this is the moment the real business is born, puzzle piece number two, because Visa looks at what it's actually holding and realizes it isn't in the loan business at all. While the Bank of America had been busy handing out all those little loans, it had accidentally built something far more valuable underneath: a gigantic payment network. Thousands of banks, hundreds of thousands of merchants, millions of customers, all wired together. And Visa decides to stop thinking like a lender and start charging rent on that infrastructure itself. The hedge fund manager Bill Ackman once described this business in almost disbelieving terms. Because what Visa figured out was how to take a fee on the simple act of spending money. Not lending it, not risking it, just moving it. And that is a business with almost no risk at all. Let me show you exactly why, because this is where it gets beautiful. Say you buy a pair of shoes for 100 euros and tap your card. In the half second before it beeps, here's what actually happens. Your card details fly from the shop to the shop's bank, the merchant's bank, which now wants to collect the 100 euros from your bank. But there are thousands of banks on Earth. The shop's bank has no direct line to yours. It needs a middleman. That's Visa. Visa reads the first digits of your card, instantly knows which bank issued it, and races over to ask, is this card real? And does this person have the money? Your bank checks, says yes, and the answer travels back through Visa to the merchant's bank to the shop. You walk out with your shoes. The whole thing took under a second. Now here's the punchline. You paid 100 euros, but the shop only receives about 99. That missing euro is split between everyone who made the sale possible. Your bank might take 20 cents, the merchant's bank 70. And Visa? Visa takes the smallest slice, as little as around 10 cents. And yet Visa made the best deal in the entire chain. Because here's the thing a credit card insider who once worked at MasterCard pointed out: Visa takes its cut no matter what. Even when you buy those shoes with money you don't have and never pay back. There's a well-known pattern where people, right before declaring bankruptcy, go on one last shopping spree and then say, I'm insolvent, I can't pay. Your bank eats that loss. The merchant might eat that loss. Visa already got paid. It only connected the payment. It never lent a cent, so it can never lose one. So 10 cents sounds like nothing. But Visa didn't do this once. It did it 210 billion times last year. Donor, t-shirt, plane ticket, bicycle. Every single time anyone, anywhere, taps a Visa card, Visa skims its slice. And this is where the model becomes almost unfair because of one word: scale. Visa's costs, staff, marketing, technology, are huge, around $11.6 billion. But they're basically fixed. Whether one payment runs through the system or 100 billion, that cost barely moves. So once Visa covers those fixed costs, every single additional tap after that is almost pure profit. In 2023 alone, Visa cleared a profit of $17 billion, and the real tell is the profit margin, the share of revenue left over as pure profit. Apple's is around 26%, Meta 34%, Microsoft 35%, Visa's 53%. Of every euro of revenue, more than half falls straight to the bottom line. Almost nothing on the planet is that profitable, which leads to the obvious question. If it's this good, why don't Apple or Microsoft or your own bank just build their own Visa and take the money for themselves? And that is the third puzzle piece, the one that makes Visa nearly untouchable. To understand it, we have to jump back to Boston, 1876, to a man named Alexander Graham Bell, who has just built a strange device in his lab and speaks a few ordinary words to his assistant in the next room. The words don't matter. What matters is that he didn't have to shout them through the house, because he'd just made the first telephone call in history. It was a marvel, and it changed almost nothing. Because think about it. What good is the only telephone on Earth? 2 phones are slightly better, but a phone only becomes world-changing when there's an entire network of them. That's the network effect. The more people are already in a network, the more useful and more powerful it becomes, and the more impossible it is for a newcomer to compete. It's the exact force that turned nearly every tech giant into a titan. And Visa is the network effect in its purest form. Its system doesn't need 1 or 2 players to work. It needs 4 at once. You, the merchant, your bank, and the merchant's bank, all participating simultaneously. Rebuilding that from scratch is, as one insider put it, like a railway. Once the tracks are laid across the entire world, laying brand new tracks beside them is monstrously expensive and slow. Visa and MasterCard spent decades laying those tracks globally. Good luck ripping them up. And that railway leads directly to the fourth and final piece, a comfortable duopoly. A duopoly is basically a monopoly, except two companies split the throne instead of one. Look at the global card market, around $60 billion last year. China does its own thing entirely, so set them aside. Visa dominates with about 59%. MasterCard sits behind at 36%. Together, two American companies control roughly 95% of the entire market. So they must be at each other's throats, right? A brutal war for supremacy? Actually, no, the complete opposite. Visa and MasterCard have coexisted peacefully for decades, barely poaching each other's customers at all. If anyone loses ground, it's the tiny remaining rivals getting squeezed. And the reason they leave each other alone is almost cynical in its logic. Both already print money with those fat margins, so why start a price war that only hurts you both? And there's a second reason they can't merge into one. The US government would never allow a single all-powerful card company to exist. Even the duopoly has dragged them into repeated antitrust battles with the US Justice Department. We even asked the EU Commission if the card duopoly bothers them, and the answer was essentially yes. But market dominance alone isn't illegal in Europe, though they've repeatedly gone after the two over their fees. And those fees are the quiet sting in all of this. Visa and MasterCard have grown so powerful that they can push high fees onto merchants who don't just absorb them, they raise their prices to cover them, for everyone. Which means here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. Even if you pay in cash, you're still paying. When America's central bank looked into it back in 2010, it found that the average household spends around $149 more per year, baked invisibly into the price of everything, just to finance the credit card machine. Whether or not you ever touch a card. So step back and look at what Visa really is. It doesn't lend money. It doesn't carry the risk when loans go bad. It doesn't manufacture anything. It sits in the half second between your tap and your coffee, and it charges a tiny toll, 210 billion times a year, on a railway so vast and so old that no one, not Apple, not the banks, not entire governments, has managed to build a competing track. Analysts have a name for a company like this: a toll booth on the modern economy. Everyone who wants to move money down the road has to slow down and drop a coin in Visa's basket. And the road only gets busier. For 50 years, the world has drifted one direction, away from cash toward the tap. Every year, more of the planet's spending flows over Visa's rails. It doesn't need to win a fight. It doesn't need to invent the next big thing. It just needs us to keep doing exactly what we're already doing, reaching for the card instead of the cash. Which means the next time you tap to pay and think nothing of it, remember, you didn't just buy the thing. You paid the toll. And somewhere in that silent half second, the best business in the world took its cut. And it always, always does.